Hey everybody, welcome to interview number 16. Today we have Audrey out of Houston who's going to discuss some of the crazy stuff that went on with her narc. I mean, this guy sounds like he's just straight out of the crime novel. And it was like, she'll tell you the whole story, but basically she ended up, having to like try to sneak away from this guy with her daughter after suffering years of mental abuse and even her daughter was a part of the abuse in that household. So I'm going to just let her tell you the story. I don't need to tell you much of anything. I was going to come straight from her lips. This is Audrey, everybody. Hey,
Hi,
Audrey.
everybody. Hello.
Yeah. So just, I gave a brief introduction, but, tell us a little bit about, who are you? And like, you living in Houston now. You have your daughter, you have one daughter. You have any other children, stuff like that.
No, just the one.
Just the one.
I have one daughter. September 25th, 2012, I believe the date was. It all culminated in him pulling a gun on me. And when he put it down because he was angry at a kitten, and he went to do harm to the kitten, I picked it up and unloaded it or attempted to unload it. What I should have done was unloaded it and left through the front door. However, I went through the back door to get to the garage where my car was parked in the driveway. He came in and through the back gate where he had left, saw I was trying to leave and tried to chase me down. What I didn't know is when I unracked the gun was that what I had done was accidentally put one in the chamber before I dropped the clip, and the gun discharged, culminating into him getting shot in the stomach.
Well, I'm not mad at that. It's like, and shit happens. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so tell us, let's back up a little bit though. So that was the end, or part of near the end. How did you get into this situation with this guy? Like, let's start in your childhood and go move forward.
Okay. I was abused during childhood. I had a narcissistic mother, and that was from my own psychologist at the time at 15 when I was finally diagnosed with PTSD. And we worked through it and everything else. I left home at 17 in large part to get away from the intimidation and abuse. My mother had even gotten my sister into it. My father had been passed away in 1979, and it kind of got worse from there. There were signs prior to that, knowing, as an adult looking back, but as a 9-year-old when I lost my dad, the signs were like, irrelevant or non-existent to me. You know what I mean? Right. I was a child. But it did culminate in a lot of abuse. She told me at one point that she would put my mental health under her happiness at one point. Yeah. So it was pretty bad. I do not communicate with her or my sister at this time.
So you say your first narc was your mother?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that was diagnosed, like I said, by my own psychologist to me, except she used the words master manipulator at the time. This was back in the 80s.
Okay.
But how it culminated in getting with him, I'd known him about 10 years. He'd always been a great guy. And what happened was we ended up dating for a while after a breakup. Now, I'd been broken up for almost a year from the guy before I started dating again. And we got together. He was a great guy. He was into aviation and everything. And we got together and he treated me great. Him and my daughter had some tussles, but only because she was mad that the other guy had broken up with me. And she didn't understand. She was young at the time. They finally started getting along and everything. We were a family for several years. And then he just started losing it. We had lost our business due to 9/11, since we were in aviation at the time, and I'd gotten hurt on my old job. So there was a lot of financial difficulty, but this was more than just financial difficulty. You know what I mean? He started acting really crazy and this and that. There was trips to the mental hospital with him On a few occasions, I started seeing signs and trying to distance myself, even though we were already married at this point. But it was just like, because I'd lost my job financially, he was holding the keys to the kingdom. We got over all of that, and I did go back to work at a very large insurance company here in town. And all of a sudden, he didn't want to work anymore because I'd had to take 5 years off for a medical leave, which was unfortunate because, I mean, I wasn't making near the money he had used to, and he still expected to live in the same lifestyle. Yeah, I was making
Okay.
about a third.
Okay. Our numbers aren't adding up here, guy. All right. Okay. So now he's sitting at home being a house husband and you're working.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happened?
Well, he would go on and off to work. He did get a union job for a while, and that was good. It got a little bit better. However, he got laid off, and he did receive unemployment being union. But when the unemployment ran out, he still wanted to sit at home, play video games. I'd come home to a dirty house, the whole 9 yards. And he's like, well, why don't you do it? And I'm like, no, just no, I can't do it all. And I'm not sure when the abuse started. I know what I was told, but I mean, I'm not quite sure. It doesn't add up on the story when the abuse started. He ended up overdosing, and I don't think he came back right, honestly.
What did he overdose on?
He overdosed on my prescription. I had just come back from a trip, and that evening is when he took my prescription. And he was raced to the hospital. He died 4 or 5 times in the ambulance. And when he came out of his medically induced coma after about a week that the doctors had put him in, first thing out of his mouth is, "You don't love me, you left me." And that was not true. I was just getting away for a little bit from the stress to attempt to, reconcile.
Right.
And it didn't work. So he went through a year of psychological therapy, which they would not release his files to me, even being legally married, because of HIPAA.
Right.
So I'm not sure, I'm not sure what he discussed with the psychiatrist, because, and I was like, why won't you release the records to me? And he just kept coming up with excuse after excuse. I think now he had finally admitted to his psychiatrist that what he was up to, and he wanted to hide it. Because I even went up there with him, and he's supposed to sign the release, and he never did sign the release. So I never got anything but receipts, for when he visited and paid the bill.
Right.
Which would have been nice, because I could probably have nipped it in the bud. Gotten her out of there before it got really, really terribly bad.
But you had no idea what was happening.
Not at all. There was times where I was putting roommates, because we did have roommates off and on through the time, up against a wall going, you need to tell me what you've seen or heard. I need to know. And they had not saw anything else. And part of that was the financial abuse, because he'd take money out of my account as soon as it hit. And I was trying to divert money, of course, but it just never seemed, he seemed like he always had a workaround. And I think he was taking her to motels, honestly, because nobody ever saw anything. And they were willing to write affidavits or testify in court to that.
So they're at the house, and if anything had happened there, they would have seen it or heard something.
Yeah, of course, something. Yeah. That's what I told my roommates. Is like, you didn't see or hear any. They're like, no. And then I'd ask for receipts for the missing money out of my account. And he'd be like, well, I don't have a receipt. I just went to Kroger, wherever, and did this and this. And he was covering his tracks enough to where, I would believe it, because I didn't have any reason to not trust him at this point.
So you think that he was taking the money out of the account to take your daughter to hotel rooms?
Yeah, I absolutely do, because it was like, it wasn't quite adding up, but I would just, not know, is ignorance on my part. Like he would, sometimes he'd have a Kroger receipt or, some other receipt, but it didn't add up to what he had actually taken out of the account. You see what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Like he'd spend 40 at the store, but he took out 80, and as you know, Houston has quite a few hot sheet motels.
Oh boy. Like that is just the biggest town that I have ever lived in. Because I used to just call it a town. That is just like just goes on forever. So you this is just a tragedy. This guy, I tell you, that's why you said that he just got accidentally hit in the stomach. I was like, okay. What do you want from me?
Well,
Sympathy not happening.
Yeah, I turned to run for him, didn't know I'd racked a bullet into the chamber, and when I went to turn around, that's when I accidentally discharged. The morning when I was printed, that morning I was sweating so bad they now use a machine that I was dripping wet from my hands, and they were like, the officer was like, do you sweat this much normally, Ms. Miller? And I was like, in this circumstance and today, apparently I do.
I know. It's like, I wouldn't know. I've never been in this situation before.
Yeah, it was my one and only arrest. It was my one and only arrest, and they cleaned the machine 15 times, and my sweat was just pooling on the machine.
Oh
and
my!
He even threatened to get out the old ink and paper.
Well, but do what you got to do.
Yeah, but it was one of those. It was very traumatic because when he pointed it in my face, it was at point blank range, about 8 to 10 feet away. And I finally told him when that morning happened, I said, "Go ahead and do it. I'm sick of your spit."
So, how many times had he done that kind of thing to you? Putting a gun in your face?
I can't remember how many times, but it was several times. He quit for a while because I threatened to leave him if he ever did it again. But that morning, he used intimidation, threats, and financial abuse was most of it. And every time I'd come up with a solution to get out of the house and get her out of the house, because that was my main concern, was not me, but her. And he had her in lockstep with him the entire time. She even went back to him after the shooting incident. And that's when everybody was like, oh my God, everything she's been saying is true. Now, she housed up with them and the whole 9 yards. Now, she's married now, and not to him. She's in another state, and she's happy now, which I'm thankful for. But I still don't even know what precipitated her to leave, because she doesn't like talking about it, and I don't want to pressure her.
Right.
But it had to be phenomenally bad for her to leave, because even after the incident with me, she still ran right back to him within about 3 to 6 months. So,
well, I mean, she had been brainwashed or whatever they call it by then, trauma bonded to him. So that would be, I could see where that might happen.
Yeah. And it flummoxed me. I was already in another state. I'd left Texas for about a year just to get away from it all. I was pretty much, after leaving my company, I was blacklisted. I couldn't get a job even at Taco Bell. So I left the state for about a year, and it was about 3 months into being out of state that I found out she had ran right back to him.
So did they make you serve any time for that?
No, I was not convicted due to the evidence. The DA did try to make an example out of me. However, that was through the information through my attorney. But I told the attorney they're investigating the wrong person, because he was extremely dirty. I found out he was running drugs out of my house, all kinds of things we did not know about, me nor my roommates.
Oh my God, this guy was just doing all, just being extra.
Yes, he was very extra, and it was very, very nerve-wracking, to say the least. It's like a chess game where you're always in check and you don't have any moves left. You know what I mean?
So, Audrey, over what period of time, from the time you met him to the time when you left the state, how many years are we talking about here?
Let's see. I knew him for 10 years before we ever dated, and then we were married for about 10 years. So about 20 years. I mean, he hit it very well. And I did try and call 3 different counties here in Texas when I found out where I thought, where it may have happened, because we had lived in 3 different counties due to work. And all of them acted like I should have known. Can you come in and make a statement? And I'm like, no, I know my rights. I want you to come to me, because what I'm scared of here in Texas, at least, is they try and make anybody look at like the bad person.
Yeah, they do.
Even if you've got even if you have irreconcilable proof. And I did not want to go down for something that I was completely ignorant of until my about a few years after it started. He's very good about keeping no paper trail, with what I think is the motel. That's only a suspicion of mine. And other things. And he would also like to do, one of the things he liked to do was come up with these emergencies. You know what I'm saying?
What do you mean?
Like this, I've got an emergency, I need $400. Or he would he would show me the letter, because I started getting suspicious. And he ended up with, I thought I'd paid. I'd given him the money to pay the tickets. He had gotten tickets. And he told me I need $400 to pay this. Well, come to find out, a few months later, he gets a warrant in the mail. He took the money from me. He's spending on God knows what else. But I get the warrant, and I'm like, what the hell is this? You told me you paid this. Well, he got mad because he had to dig into his motorcycle savings fund to pay it. Because I told him, no, I'm not giving you another $400. You can either go sit it out or pay out of your little change box there. And that infuriated him.
Oh, yeah, you can't tell them no. No. They don't like to hear no.
No, they do not like hearing no. Absolutely not.
Good for you, though.
But,
okay, so what happened to this guy?
Nothing, as far as I know, because I still tried attempting to turn him in after this was over, because what happened with him, there's no statute of limitations in Texas. He's still walking around free. And as far as I know, my own in-laws knew about the situation and still took him and my daughter in after it was all over. It was a tough nut. Yeah, posted pictures on Facebook of the 2 of them together and everything.
Okay, those people are kind of sick.
Yeah, they're Jehovah's Witnesses, and we kept our distance during the time of my marriage to him. But yeah, I don't know if it's something with their church or what. I don't want to go, dragging down some, any, faith. But it was just mind-boggling to me that they would accept something like that.
Yeah, that's not normal. I don't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know about dragging down people's faith, but I don't care. Because to me, a whole bunch of people in my family are Jehovah's Witnesses, and I see it as nothing more than a cult. And so the cult-like behavior that's what that would be demonstrating. Who would think that something like that is something that you should publicly post on the internet when this man has committed crimes against this child?
Yes, absolutely. Well, taking them in together, I just don't know what, I don't know what story he may have told his parents or anything else, but I know that they never contacted me to, get my side of the story.
Right.
And nobody did.
So, well, I'm glad to hear that, it ended well for your daughter and that she's, she's happy and doing her thing in another state. So, Audrey, when you look back at your story with this guy, this trail of disaster that this guy left in your life, what do you think you could have done to avoid it, with your 2020 hindsight? Where did you see a red flag or something that made you go, about him?
Oh, his anger issues when they started up, about a year into our marriage. I should have taken note right then and yanked her from the household, whether she wanted to be yanked or not. At the time, though, I was still injured. I was off almost 5 years for a medical injury and surgery and the whole 9 yards. But it was one of those where it was just too much, and I didn't see the signs coming. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just one of those where I either overlooked the signs or they just, were hidden from me. Because once I did find out, I almost went, like I said, pushing people up against walls and demanding answers out of them simply because, my daughter, that's my only child,
Right.
and I did not want things to happen to her that happened to me when I was growing up. And in my ignorance, I ended up making it worse. I didn't turn a blind eye to it, but it was one of those things where I just wasn't seeing the red flags. And the bad thing about it is everybody else thought he was a great guy too. That was the thing. He was very well hidden. These guys, they will go darn near undercover from their own personality, but then you get behind closed doors and they let that little demon out. And something I used to tell them is don't ever, ask me to choose between you or my daughter, because my daughter, you're going to lose. That's my daughter. So I guess he took that, as a threat and as an indication he should work on her. So watch your children, guys. Please watch your children. If they start acting funky or anything else, investigate. But here I was, he was treating her like his own daughter in front of me. And then behind my back, other stuff was going on. She was covering for him, though, because she didn't know any better.
Right. So when all of this, when you suspect that this started, since you don't really know, when your suspect date, how old was she?
Let's see, about 15, 14, 15, right in there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a vulnerable age. That's when the traffickers go after girls the most too.
Yes, absolutely. And from what I understand, they're heavy down here.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I guess I want to give you also an opportunity to, you did say to watch out, protect your children. That red flag you saw was the anger issues. Do you have any other red flags that the lady should watch out for early on?
If something's not adding up, Deb, then double check and make sure your addition's correct. And if there is something not adding up, pursue it. If you have to pursue, be careful if you're pursuing it yourself, though. A lot of these guys can get very violent very quickly. But pursue it nonetheless. Start asking questions at the very least. Had I known when I was back to work and making money, I could have hired a private investigator. But again, yeah. And if you've got the money, I would say hire a PI. That way you keep you and your family safe from whoever's doing this. Seriously, because they can get violent on a drop of a dime. A lot of them, and just go from one way to the other, just shift a 180.
Now, I remember you saying in the interview that he was in this medically induced coma, and that you said he came back and he was different.
Yes.
How was he different?
Well, the first thing I noticed is when seconds of them taking him off the medication that puts you in that state is he started crying, you left me. And I said, no, I did, because we'd been having a few problems before, but nothing major. I'd just gone to clear my head at a friend. She had flown me out. She was homesick, and she travels, and she flew me out so I could see her for a few days. I was only gone 3-4 days, and he just acted like the whole world ended. Well, when he came to, he's like, you left me. I said, no, I just tried to get stuff sorted out. And I kept on explaining this to him, and even after he was conscious, you left me. And it's like, I needed to clear my head. And I still didn't know that, and I think now it may have been him trying to protect his own behind. I don't know what was going through his head, because it's very difficult to think like they do.
Yeah, it is.
You just don't know. And sometimes logic does not come into the equation on their part. And it was totally illogical. I had told him every day I was coming back. He got calls every day I was coming back. And we were talking stuff out over the phone. But it was all, you left me.
So when he stopped that phase and he got back home, Was he
Mm-hmm.
behaving did he talk weird, anything, walk weird, anything else?
He started holding, sorry, he started holding grudges all the time, and not wanting to do what, a guy's supposed to do in a relationship. And, just messing off and not wanting to work, didn't want to open up his old business. I found out, in fact, he had basically given away almost $50,000, $30,000 to $50,000 worth of tools that he could never get back. Yeah, because he's like, I just don't want to do it anymore. And I didn't find that out till like 6 months after he'd given them away.
So we're not saying sold, gave away, just gave.
Yeah, just gave
Oh,
to the guy
wow.
that was storing them for him. And I was like, did you get any money? Because that was at the point where I was still injured. And he's like, no, I let him have it for the rent. I said, there's only been 6 months and it's not that big of a toolbox. You just gave away $30,000 to $50,000 worth of aviation tools. We could have paid him $1,000. You could have sold this and we could have paid him $1,000 for the rent. It's not like we were hanging in an airplane.
Okay, so he was just making a whole bunch of series of bad decisions.
Yes, very, very bad. And I admit I made bad decisions with them financially too. But I mean, it's one of those where it's like, I was doing what I thought was best at the time financially. We moved from our house up to North Side so he could go into another industry. He ran them to quite a few bad people. I did not like the industry. It was record driving. And he seemed to love it, like be in his element with some of these people. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, I do not like this industry. I do not want you in this industry. I do not like this life. And there were plenty of times I told him that, and then followed up with when he tried to push back that, look, I want a divorce. I can't do this anymore. And I said that for a good 3-4 years before the shooting incident occurred.
Oh, so you was ready to go.
Yeah. And I'd already started banking money extra in my 401k and everything else. So that was about the only way I could get money out of his hands and everything, because he switched some stuff around. We had a joint bank account, so of course he could switch some stuff around. And I started saving up extra money in my 401k, but my 401k turned into pay the lawyer and keep me out of prison money. And that's what happened.
Well, still, it's a good thing you had it.
Oh, I'm very thankful I did have it. The funny thing is my bond was the biggest bond in court that night, including the drug dealers. And I still would manage, because that was my first arrest and only arrest, to get a PR bond. But yeah, the DA wanted to try and make an example out of me out of husband abuse.
Oh, please, get out of here.
Yes, I thought was absolutely hilarious, because the person I'm talking about, my husband, is 6 foot tall and was about 350 pounds at the time. I'm 5'7".
I'm so abusing him.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's the same problem I had. I had a traffic thing I wanted to go. I went to court about when I was in Houston, and had the same situation. It's like they just, I don't know, even when you have proof, I had like photo evidence, and they still wanted to convict. I mean, it was only a ticket, but still the principle is the same. I'm giving you proof that what you're saying is wrong, and you still want to convict anyway. But luckily the judge could tell that they were stupid. So even after the jury said, guilty, the judge says, oh, just come and see me tomorrow. So he nullified it anyway.
Oh, well, good for you.
Yeah.
I like I said, my heart dropped when I was told by my attorney that the DA was trying to make an example out of me on spousal abuse. Because, I mean, it just came crashing down, like, all the stuff I'd put up with for the last 5-6 years, and knowing what I knew behind the scenes. And I'm an upstanding, working person, and I volunteer for, several different things, including the Domestic Violence Women's Center here in Montgomery County after we moved, and I'm being the one targeted.
Yeah, I think they like to do that when it's women.
They do. I do believe here in this state, at least, that they've got something funky going on. I mean, the ladies at the domestic violence in the Harris County are great. And last time, I checked anything on that when I was volunteering, they were all women. But you start getting some of the male prosecutors involved, and it's, we're going to make an example out of her. Right. And I'm not the only one that said that. There's a few other women I know that the DA's office has tried to do that too.
Mm-hmm. And that's like, can we just stick to the law here?
Yeah, exactly.
Treat everyone equally and stop with this trying to, make a case for yourself stuff.
Absolutely. And it was right in the police report that the everything had been discharged except the one bullet that I had, accidentally racked wrong. Because what happened is when you drop a clip, you're supposed to unrack it, because he always kept one in the chamber. And when I did that, I did it backwards because I was under, extreme fear for my life. He had just pointed the gun in my face. And I flubbed the call to 911 because all I could remember at the time was he tried to hurt my cat. Nothing was said about me on the 911 call, So, but it was because he had tried taking the cat. He said, I'm going to take care of this cat. And he grabbed it by the head and neck, this little kitten, and looked like he was trying to crush it in his hand as he walked out the door. And that's all I could think of. That? I don't, him apparently. But when I tried to leave, my one mistake was not leaving through the front door and then sneaking back up the driveway to my car. I honestly believe that, and unloading the gun improperly. And I have shooting experience, a lot of shooting experience, but even in something like that where you've just had your life threatened, that's not a range. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
and that's where I got all my training. I've never been under circumstances that hard, to go, you've got to, that's why the police train like they do. That's what I should say.
Girl.
They put you under a lot of pressure and then, have you tested. How do you react under pressure? I'd never been to the range put under pressure to know how I was going to react.
Well, I appreciate you stopping in to tell us this story, and I'm glad, so glad that you and your daughter got out, that you are not behind bars, that your daughter is happily married somewhere else and not thinking about this situation. It's 2 thumbs up, Audrey. Good job.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, Deborah.
I'm going to do my best to get this up really soon, and so everybody can hear your story and your tips, because those are some good ones. Everybody has different suggestions, and I'm just really impressed with all of your insight. Everybody's willingness to be on camera and to talk about their stories. That's a super brave women. You guys,
I appreciate that. I really very much appreciate that, and I appreciate your shows because, like I told you in the pre-interview, if I had not lost contact with you in the library, I would have kept reading you, and maybe none of this would have happened. You've got excellent advice. I have a mouth as bad as yours in real life, so I get a lot of what you're saying. But hindsight's 20/20, and just try and think it through, guys. That's all I got to say. And if you can afford it, keep yourself out of danger. Hire a PI. If you have
that
any
sounds like a plan,
especially about any of your children. Please hire a PI if you can afford it, or get some of your cousins, family members, that you can trust to that look out for you and your kids. You know what I mean? And have them do a little investigating for you, so you're not putting yourself or your children in danger.
That sounds like a plan.
The cops don't help. Sometimes they do not help.
They don't. Well, thanks, Audrey. I think I'm gonna go get me something to eat, because all this talking has made me work up an appetite.
Oh yeah, me too.
Okay, girlfriend, I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.